We'll transition now to our next section around water supply and use. Wade, you earlier mentioned that one facility, Cabot, is using treated wastewater from one of our other facilities. What other alternative sources of water does Cabot use for its process and non-process needs?
Finding alternatives is important to us. Often when we're building a new plant, the people who are choosing a location don't put a lot of time into thinking about what's the water supply like at that location. So as we start to go into the design phase, we have to take what we got at the facility. And we use a variety of sources. It really depends on what's available at the site. Some sites will use surface water and filter it and use it in our process. Many of our sites are larger sites, 15, 20, or 30 acres, and we will reclaim first flush and rainwater. As I mentioned, at several of our plants in China, our water source may be someone else's industrial wastewater. And so actually the rainwater is a much higher quality than that primary water supply. So if we can capture rainwater and use it in the plant, it often requires less treatment than other water sources we have available. And we'll also try to recover as much water from our own systems, process streams within our plant, and clean up the water for whatever source that we have to send it to. And, by taking some of those process streams, wastewater streams, and cleaning them up, that also helps us reach our goal of reducing the wastewater volume leaving our facility.
Great. Larry, what types of alternative supply sources is PepsiCo considering or using?
Well, in terms of sources that are external to the facility for processing, we really haven't considered and don't consider any alternative sources. We either source municipal potable supplies or groundwater from our own wells, for ingredient or direct processing uses. And again, because of, the nature of our business, that's pretty much a requirement. Now, for ancillary uses, though, that's a whole other matter. And in some of our facilities, as Wade mentioned, we do harvest rainwater for use in some of those things like toilet flushing, for example. So we have some sites that recover rainwater and reuse it for that after just a little bit of treatment. On the food processing side, though, we have a number of locations where we recover our own processed water and bring that back up to potable water standards and then reuse it. So I suppose that qualifies as a reuse, but from an alternative internal source. And again, though, looking at that perception issue, when we do that, it's very, very careful to make sure that all sanitary wastewaters are excluded from that equation. I think we all know that from a technological point of view, we can take sanitary wastewater and we can clean that up to potable water standards. But in general, the consuming public's not ready for that. Certainly not, for products like ours. So on the beverage side, again, we don't reutilize or reuse any water there for ingredient water. Although in some places we are cleaning it to the point where technically we could do that, but again, with consumer concerns, we're quite careful not to use anything but water that would be, perceived as pristine water. Again, on the process side, for ancillary purposes, cooling water, things like that, those are places where we can use some of the recovered water.
Glad you brought up the ancillary needs. Wade, could you comment more on any ways Cabot makes use of processed water for those types of needs?
We definitely reuse as much water within our site as we can. Typically, we'll use an RO recovery process. And even if we're not making what some people would consider RO quality or D-min quality water, like you might use in a boiler, we're still vastly improving the quality of that water when we treat it. And maybe we're not getting as high recovery rates as you would starting with something like clean municipal water going through a RO system, but we can still recover a lot of the water and use it in our facility. The other thing about using our own internal process streams for water recovery is that people think of industrial facilities as having dirty wastewater, but a big difference that Larry's kind of hinted at is in an industrial facility, you control the chemicals that come on site. Unlike municipal wastewater where you don't know what someone is dumping down their drain, an industrial facility, you typically have a lot of control of what's on site and what's near water. And that actually makes it easier for you to treat and reuse the water within the plant.
How are you monitoring your water use at your facilities? Larry, can you start us off? What types of data collection and tracking approaches do you take?
Sure. Yeah, this is a really important one. At PepsiCo, we started this well over 15 years ago, first in the U.S. At our snacks operations. And nowadays it's grown into a global activity, in fact, a standard for both food and beverage processing. So we've got our own internal standards that look at water use efficiency for every type of product that we make. The water use is recorded and reported into a central database at least monthly. And then every site is tracked and evaluated against the other sites that are making similar products. We like to say it's racked and stacked, and we rank them from top to bottom. And we're always pushing to improve that water use efficiency on both the snacks and the beverage side.
A little competition is always good. Thanks, Larry. And Wade, same question.
So we treat water usage at our facilities like any other process variable in our plant. All of our plants use process information systems to track water use, and we use statistical process control systems to monitor the performance and identify when something is consuming more water than we expect. We'll have alarms in place that let us know if we've got abnormally high water use somewhere. And we also use this information on an annual basis to just track progress of our plants and monitor how much water they're using over the course of a year and look for ways to improve on it.
Can you talk about the impact these tracking measures have had? Let's go with Wade, then Larry.
Definitely. I'd start by just saying that in order to track something, you have to be able to track something to improve on it. And our environmental group is looking at our water use and wastewater discharges continuously over the course of a year. That's definitely helping us by looking at those water and reuse rates, water discharge rates, and water usage, and that helps drive down our costs by paying attention to them and intervening where we need to.
Larry, what about your experience at PepsiCo?
Well, I've got to agree with Wade completely on that. When we started this process, again, back in the beginning, when we first began this in the U.S. in the Frito-Lay group, we were focused solely on cost reduction. It was all about reducing costs. But it very quickly became apparent that it's much more than that. There's a lot more at stake than just costs. And so as we got into it, just within the first couple of years, we even changed the name. It started out as a utilities cost reduction program, and we changed that name to resource conservation. And nowadays, globally, it's just referred to as recon. But it's just for that reason. It's not just cost. In fact, sometimes I say there's something in this for everyone. If you're one of those who doesn't get too jazzed about protecting the environment and saving resources, well, then let's talk about money. And if you don't care about money, well, let's talk about what we're doing to save this precious resource. And so again, it's a win-win situation in that regard. So when you talk about efficiency and how you use water, it's about being a good steward. Excuse me. And so, again, looking at that, I'd say you've got to do that at least monthly. If you're not looking at it monthly, you're not tracking that and reviewing progress and putting pressure on those sites that aren't delivering, then you're not going to be able to make progress. This was made into a huge priority for us. And as a result, if you go back and compare it from where we started, we've seen a 25% improvement in our water use efficiency. And we've just recently set a new goal to improve our water use efficiency by another 25% by 2025. So, it has been a big deal for us, and it's going to continue to be that. I mean, we're very interested in costs, of course, but as I've already mentioned, now we're seeing things that transcend just cost. We're looking at whether we can be able to produce products at all, have that license to operate. And being able to demonstrate good stewardship is important, even to the point of knowing the water use efficiency at a particular plant. Those are key things that come along with having to measure this and reflect on your effectiveness in that measurement process and the improvement process as you go.